This is Creepy and Geeky. Hey, all you creeps and geeks. I'm your host, Robert, and today's episode is part 2 of my Scream series. Today, we're talking Scream 3 and 4, and joining me for this is return visitor to the show, Amber Knapp. Amber is a
What is
blogger,
up?
editor, and writer with bylines at Hear Us Scream, Neon Splatter, and another one for thefire.com. Welcome back to the show, Amber.
Oh, thank you for having me. You brought me on for one of my favorite subjects. I'm gonna ramble even more today. It's gonna be fun.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, there's definitely I got a lot, especially for one of the movies. So we're gonna get into some nice stuff. But first, a new feature on the show that I'm doing now is when a guest is on, I ask, what is your first horror movie? What's the first one you can remember, and what was that the start of a long time love affair for horror, or you know let's just start with what was your first horror movie?
So normally when this comes up, I always say it's a Nightmare on Elm Street because that was the movie where after I saw it, I dove into going to the video stores renting every horror movie I could.
Right.
But like going back before that, because I thought it was Evil Dead 2 for a while because my dad showed it to me and like the slapstick nature of it went entirely over my head at the time I
Right.
watched it because I had never seen anything like it. But my first horror movie was actually Maximum Overdrive. Like it was one of those where
uh
my parents watched it and they're real hit and miss on what horror they like, and funnily enough the Scream franchise is ones that they love.
that's
But
funny.
no, my dad would always tell a story about how we took my mom on a date to the drive-in to see Maximum Overdrive. And then it was one where if it was on TV or we had probably four copies of it between DVD and Blu-ray now. And yeah, it was just kind of funny watching it and looking back on it now and knowing so much about it. It's yeah, I think I want to shift it up of yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street got me into horror, but Maximum Overdrive feels like such a vibe as my actual first horror movie. And especially being such a Stephen King fan now, it's
Right.
nah, let's just do the full AC/DC camp movie that he hates now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so that, that was that the did you from that point on have that love affair for horror movies, or was it seeing Nightmare on Elm Street later that really did it for you?
Yeah, I was definitely seeing Nightmare on Elm Street
Okay.
later because I watched those and I'm like, okay, these are just movies I watch. I never sat and kind of sunk into the horror genre. At the time, it was just okay, these are other movies I watch. I'm gonna go watch cartoons now or something afterwards.
Right. All right, that's cool. That's cool. I will. I'll be doing an episode on Maximum Overdrive. Uh, Sometime I think. Let me see.
Yeah, what's that double feature gonna be? Like Maximum Overdrive and Christine?
No,
Oh.
actually, it's going to be in April, and it's going to be Maximum Overdrive and Sleepwalkers.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
two of
Sleepwalkers
his
is one I haven't seen.
oh yeah, no, it's two of his more wild movies. So
I think
definitely.
Sleepwalkers I think Sleepwalkers, I always see the one GIF of it, going around on Twitter and such, but I've never actually seen it.
Oh yeah, no, you should definitely check it out. It's a fun movie. All right. So that being said, let's jump right into Scream, and we're starting off with Scream 3, which is personally my favorite, my second favorite,
Mm,
because my first favorite will always be number one. But number
always.
three, number three is my second favorite. Much to most people's chagrin, number three is typically their lowest one. But number three is
Hmm.
my second favorite for many reasons, and even more so now after I found out a little bit more information about the movie.
Hmm.
So that being said, when did you first see Scream 3 and how did you see it?
See, I unfortunately like for the original trilogy of Scream, like we'll get into it with four because that I have a
Right.
distinct memory with the first one, but like the original trilogy of Scream for me, I think was just doing the. I mean, I don't know if you were a Hollywood Video kid or which video store you frequented, but there was a while where Hollywood Video had it was essentially like a monthly subscription where you paid so much a month and you could rent whatever you wanted as much as you
Oh,
wanted,
okay.
kind of a
Yeah.
deal. And I feel like the Scream trilogy that might have been it, or even like the first two I might have watched with my cousin because like I went and saw Scream 4 with him.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, there's just so many movies where I could probably tie it to a video store of like I don't have the distinct memory, but odds are it was I went to Hollywood Video or Family Video and rented it when I was just getting my grubby little hands on any horror movie I could after I fell in love with them. Because like I know that was how I saw Ginger Snaps, that was how I saw Candyman. That's how I kind of like went down the line of what are these hard hitting classics I need to see, and the
Right.
Scream trilogy was right there.
You say you were like roughly in your mid-teen years then?
Oh yeah, I was probably 13, 14 at
Okay.
that
Yeah.
time for sure. Because this would have
Okay.
been, yeah, like the trilogy would have long been in video stores because this would have been like 2004, 2005,
Yeah.
roughly
Okay.
about, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was lucky. I got to see it in theaters, because by the time this came out, I was a grown ass adult, with a kid already by that point. Um,
Forgot I was so much
so
younger.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm just an old fart. So but no, I got to see it in theaters. I was already a huge fan of the series as it was, and so of course as soon as I possibly could, I went to the theater and saw it. So uh but so for me, seeing this movie was, so the the first two, they kind of follow along their, whatever formula they did. And then with
Mhm,
number three, like they broke out of that mold. This is the first one that was not written by Kevin Williamson.
mhm.
And uh, and this one gets a lot of hate. Partially
Yeah.
because it wasn't written by Kevin Williamson. They kind of broke from a lot of the formula that they'd already established in the first two while building new um onto everything, talking about, the rules of the trilogy and all
Hmm.
of this stuff, and kind of just really, changed a lot of stuff. Totally getting into the spoilers on this because that's how I do. But this
As
one
it
only
should
has
be.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
this one only has one killer,
Hmm.
and that was a change to the formula so far. And since, 4 and 5 both had two killers each.
Right.
And and so they have a very strict formula that they typically go with, and number three bucked that trend and added a lot more comedy, and it was a lot more tame on the gore and violence and everything like that. And with reading up on this, I understand a lot more why they ended up
Yeah.
having to do it this way. And this came out literally less than a year after the Columbine massacre.
Hmm.
And they didn't, so they wanted to really take it out of the school setting. They
Yeah.
wanted to, and that's the reason why they took out the two killers aspect of it,
Yep.
because they were like, okay, yeah, let's not focus on that. Let's just make it one killer. Although although there's still a lot of evidence to the fact that they had two killers going pretty much up
Yeah.
until the last minute, and then they made a last minute decision to change
Yeah.
that. And so there's still stuff in the movie that plays to the fact that there is a second killer, and we'll get into
Yeah.
that because that's actually way more interesting um in retrospect. So but so with this information now and understanding that they had to make these concessions, because the original idea,
Hmm.
from what I've read,
Yeah.
you don't quote me, I don't know if it's gospel or not, but was
Yeah.
that Kevin Williamson actually did a treatment for this. He couldn't write the whole script, but he submitted a kind of rough outline of what they could do with the story. And his rough outline was that Stu Macher was still alive, and which
I
is
mean,
always
that
my
hasn't changed.
I'm yeah, that's that's been my thing forever. It's like, come on, like bring Stu Macher back. Obviously, they've been wanting to bring him back. So, um, but so he was back, but he was like not controlling kids, but like influencing
Yeah.
kids at the high
Mhm.
school to, and it was going to be more than just two, even. It was supposed to be
Really.
like a group of kids. And so it was supposed to be this huge thing, but because it was set in the high school and everything like that, they were just like, okay, yeah, we can't do that. We got to take it out of that. We got to, pare it back, make everybody an adult, take it to
Hmm.
Hollywood, really get rid of it. And I like that aspect of it too, because taking it out of it and then putting it on the set of Stab 3, the movie within the
Hmm.
movie, the just made everything just so much more meta and more fun. And
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. That was the thing that I really enjoyed about that, was because they had to kind of like tame it down. They upped the comedy a bit more on
Hmm.
it. And sure, it seems kind of goofy and weird and everything, especially for a series that, while it does have some comedy to it, is more horror based.
Yeah.
And so I just, for me, all this being said,
Yeah.
that's why I really enjoyed it, was for that
Hmm.
aspect of it.
Oh yeah, like, and kind of looking back on it, this kind of came out like, I love meta horror comedies like Cabin
Mm-hmm.
in the Woods, all that kind of stuff, like all the kind of wink wink nudge nudge jokes that are thrown in. But this came out in what, 2000? And so
2000,
like,
yeah.
yeah, so before this you had what? Wes Craven's New Nightmare was what, 94,
And
97,
94, yeah. Yeah.
94, and then like after this we had Seed of Chucky. So like over that decade we had three really strong meta horror trilogies, or meta horror parts of franchises that are all still fantastic movies today. Um like as far as writing goes, you can definitely see things peppered through between either Williamson's, what he contributed, which, by the way, I will always bring up screenwriting as an example because, again, spoiler alert, this is the only time in a movie where I felt the surprise sibling aspect was not lazy. Like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
actually had like a build up
Yeah.
through,
No,
like
it like
he
the
spawned it,
whole,
like it's so
yeah.
good.
Yeah. The whole Sydney and her mom and everything aspect of this, that this trilogy does, that at least these first three movies do, that this whole aspect of it was very interesting and very cool, that
Mhm.
like they did this whole, like her mom had gone to Hollywood and had this incident
Mhm.
happen to her, and that it turns out that the bastard son that she had, that she was denying, was like the whole architect of every
Yeah.
problem that happened since. And so,
Hmm.
and it was just like, it was great. I personally found that to be awesome, that that was, and it totally played into what Randy said in his video.
Yeah.
Randy's awesome, great appearance in this movie, the
I love
return
it
of
so
Randy
much.
from beyond the grave. um you know and
Which
so
again, so like freaking legacy characters of that coming back, and then you have
yeah.
Heather Matarazzo as his sister, and then jump
Yes.
ahead to five, she comes back and it's Randy's niece
Yes.
and nephew in this. I'm like, oh my God, yes.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, no. And so, and he's talking about that the rules of the trilogy in this. And that's what's fun about it too, because we already got the rules of the sequel in the last one. Now we're getting the rules of a trilogy. And like he says,
Hmm.
everything you knew about the past is wrong. What you don't
Hmm.
know is going to come back and bite you. And
Hmm.
and that was more true than anything else. Like everything that she ever knew about her family, about her mother, about everything was just it came round, and all culminated in that. And that was great. Now, so what I read up on this too was
Hmm.
Aaron Kruger was hired on by the Weinsteins to
But
write this movie. Aaron Kruger had not seen nor was interested in the Scream movies. And so his when he was writing it, they actually had to Wes Craven himself actually had to do on-set rewrites for a
mm,
lot of this movie because Aaron Kruger did not have the characters correct. They're the way that the characters had already been established in the first two
hmm.
movies. So Wes Craven was kind of having to rewrite this movie constantly on the fly. That what I read was that sometimes there were pages being rewritten the day of shooting. So it kind of made for kind of a messiness to the movie, but I think that
Yeah.
actually played well into it as well. It made everything more spontaneous, I think. And I think that's
Yeah.
where the movie, I can see where people can have issues with it, but I personally feel like it made the movie better in a lot of ways because it it made it more spontaneous. It made things more
Hmm.
interesting on the fly like that, and they had to make those decisions. Like there were two killers throughout the
Yep.
movie. It was supposed to be Roman and it was supposed to be Angelina, and they were supposed to have like,
Mm.
and Angelina was like the clues were all there. That whole
Yeah.
moment where she's in the bathroom and Sydney discovers her, she was
Yeah.
literally about to change into Ghostface and terrorize her. But they and so there's some other things that go on, the house explosion stuff, like it's very
Yeah.
like
That one I remember.
it's actually the red, like she becomes this red herring, and
Mm.
then her death scene, all you do is see her down on the ground, she's kind of bloody, and then she gets
Yeah.
pulled off screen. You don't see that she's actually dead. It's
Yeah. And they kind of do
you
the
know
same thing with like Roman, where Gale
yeah,
finds him and then boom,
exactly.
he comes back. Like they obviously kind of faked it.
Yes. So
Uh,
that's the interesting part that I really wanted to get into
yeah.
about this was is that she was so there's two ways of looking at this. Either
Hmm.
Roman did kill her to knock off his partner, and
Hmm.
to because it this was the end game, and he didn't need her anymore. Everything was done. Sydney was there. He would and pretty much everybody else had already been knocked off at that point. So he didn't need her anymore. So she could be dead, and nobody ever knew that she was a killer.
Yeah.
And once
Huh.
Roman was dead and they only knew it was him, then that was all they needed. They didn't need to look into anybody else. But the other aspect of it is what if she didn't die and she was playing dead and she actually got away with it, and she's the only ghost face killer who ever got away with it. That's an interesting aspect
Yeah.
of it.
See, and that's funny because I've actually never heard this theory with like just that and amongst the rewrites. Because I always knew about two where the killers were originally going to be Derek and Hallie, and then that got out, and then they had to rewrite it
Right.
and that. So
Which I was glad that they had to rewrite that one. Like
yeah,
I wouldn't have
I
minded Hallie being the killer, but Derek, the boyfriend, again being the
yeah,
killer
like
just seemed too much.
it's like God, give the
And
girl a rest, man.
yeah, I already have a problem with number two being so much like number one as it
Hmm.
is. Like it's just you know I have a better appreciation after I watched it this last time, but
Yeah,
up until now, it's always been one of those movies, and I love them. I love all of them.
yeah.
But number two was always my lowest, because it just felt like they were going through a lot of the same motions with the overall storyline, and that's why I think
Hmm.
I like number three a lot better too. Was because it changed everything. It moved it forward, changed
Hmm.
locations, and it felt like a true ending. If they had ended Scream after Scream 3, I would have been perfectly fine. I,
Oh,
I
agree.
love that. I love that we're getting more, but number three felt like a definitive ending to the whole
Hmm.
story. Um, but but yeah, so apparently even in the commentary, Wes Craven says specifically, and I haven't listened to it, but he says that Angelina was meant to be the second killer, and
Really?
up until near the end of it, she was meant to be, and that's why there's so many instances of her, you know, basically doing this stuff. I mean, obviously, I mean, they're going to throw red herrings in there anyway, but she
Yeah.
seems to be so much of a red herring that it
Hmm.
seems obvious that she was supposed to be the killer. And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, so he said that 100% she was supposed to be, but they had to change it at the very end and you know, lop
Yeah.
that part of it off. So
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like throughout the movie between her and just in general, like mentioning how Wes was having to do rewrites like as they went, like
mm-hmm.
even notice, oh God, because I just watched this a few days ago before we recorded. And the one thing that always sticks out to me is Jennifer,
Yes.
Judy Jurgenstern.
Yeah.
But because at first, like after the second killer, and she freaks out and with like the who dies next in the script, and she's like, it's her. And they're like, no, there's multiple scripts in that. So like she's freaking out that she dies third in the movie, but then jump ahead to the climax when they're at the mansion and the killer's hunting her down. She's like, no, you can't kill me. I'm the killer in Stab 3. And it's like that like just always stuck out to me that even throughout the script, she freaked and didn't know what was going on. That she went from
Yeah.
being the third kill to being the killer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's it's so funny. It's just like it would have been interesting to get that, just to have that extra killer aspect in it, just because
Hmm.
that was the norm that we
Yeah,
had up to that point and ever since. But again, I
yeah,
do like that they kind of cut that, they had to cut it in that way, and left it more ambiguous, and
yeah,
and left it as, was she really a killer after all, and if so, did she die or
yeah.
did she get away with it? And I kind of like that more ambiguousness to it now,
Hmm.
going back on that, because that actually kind of leaves it open to her returning at some point. I doubt they would ever do that, but they
That'd be
could.
a real obscure legacy character, but that would be kind of
Right.
funny. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, wish Jennifer wasn't done so we could see Gail and Jennifer again because that was just fantastic throughout the whole
Oh yeah,
movie.
no, yeah, Jennifer, yeah, would be great. Yeah, no, I would watch a total spinoff of of Jennifer and Gail. Like
Oh,
that was hilarious. I love the whole sequence with Parker Posey and Courtney Cox is just great.
mm-hmm. Fucking space mom in the basement is so funny. Like I had to show
Yeah,
this to my friend. It's like they're not into horror, but I'm like, no, you have to see this 1 minute 30 seconds with Carrie
yeah.
Fisher. It is perfect.
Oh, it's so great. So that's going into that. That's another aspect of this that I really want to talk about,
Hmm.
is that and you mentioned this, we kind of briefly touched on it on Twitter,
Hmm.
but there is an aspect of to me what feels like Wes Craven giving a big ass middle finger to
Hmm.
Weinstein.
Oh, it was a big
And
ass middle finger to a lot of people. And
yeah, but I feel like it's super against Weinstein,
oh
especially in the
God.
wake of everything we know about Weinstein now.
Which
Because
good.
yeah,
Fuck
yeah,
him. Fuck him.
yeah, exactly. No, and that's what I think is interesting about that, because I think what ended up happening is, like, we all found out about Weinstein, you
Hmm.
know, within recent years, but I think in Hollywood it was kind of one of those dirty open secrets that everybody
Yeah.
kind of talked about it, knew about it, but he was so powerful they couldn't do shit about it.
Yeah. Where,
And
they just wrote in, oh my God, what's his name? Lance Henriksen's Milton. It was like John Milton. Yeah.
yes.
He's interchangeable with so many people in
Oh, so
Hollywood. And
many.
that's
Like
the scary
it's
thing.
a problem in Hollywood. Yeah, for sure. Weinstein is not the only one. There's so many people who are in Hollywood who abuse actresses and have this fucking power trip and everything. And not just actresses, but actors as well, because we've heard about Brendan Fraser and oh man, Terry
Corey
Crews, that
Feldman.
they've yeah, yeah, and yeah, the child actors and stuff like Corey Feldman and stuff. There's so much abuse going on there that is just rampant, and it's just sick. That John Milton's character, that is definitely a stand-in for all that. But again, I feel like it was a really big pointed thing towards Weinstein,
Hmm.
in regards to a lot of what was going on. And because we get not only the Milton stuff and about how Maureen Prescott as Rena Reynolds had been victimized there, and that this whole Scream series is fallout from that. We also get Carrie Fisher's character talking about how that she could have been Princess Leia, but she didn't because she wouldn't sleep with George Lucas. And then we also get Angelina's character saying at the end that the only reason why she got the part is because she slept with Milton. And so
Hmm.
we have a bunch of these instances in this movie that are specifically talking about that, and about this culture of having to sleep your way into these jobs. And so it's part of this, that whole toxic, nasty culture in Hollywood, that has been around. Everybody knows about casting couches and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It's been that 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 shitty, like, way for people in power to you know prey on young actors and actresses. and
Hmm.
and it's been going on for probably since Hollywood began.
Yeah.
um and so I really felt like, in the wake of what we know about Weinstein now, and the fact that Wes Craven had, at least, especially later on with the movie Cursed, that him and Kevin
Hmm.
Williamson did, that got, like, they got most of it done, then they scrapped it and had to refilm it completely.
Yep.
And so, in the wake of that and other things, that I really think it was this big, like, middle finger to Weinstein and others, of course, but I think really to
Yeah.
Weinstein. And I think Weinstein was just too stupid to not realize it,
I
or just
mean,
thought he was so untouchable that it didn't
yeah,
matter.
probably a bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, he's gonna rot.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm glad that he himself has had some comeuppance on that, and I'd like to see others in the industry also get their comeuppance as well. But
Mhm.
it's just pretty pervasive. I just thought that was an interesting aspect of the movie that they focus on a lot in that, and that's kind of like a weird overall message in it,
Yeah.
that I didn't think about before, because again, like we said, it's been part of Hollywood. It's just
Yeah.
something and accept. But like I said, in the wake of what we know about Weinstein now,
Hmm.
that is something that makes this movie even more interesting on retrospect.
Yeah. And like, because like Milton does get his comeuppance,
Yeah.
Roman slits his throat, and that's like can't be more direct than that.
Yeah.
And like, I don't like kind of just talking about the climax in general for this movie, like apart from Milton getting his revenge, the climax for three has always been my favorite because of Sydney's confrontation with him and
Right.
the not even subtle middle finger that they were having to give to Hollywood in general, where she's like, you know why you kill? Because you choose to. And this was, again, post Columbine. They were blaming
Yeah.
those kids for the video games, the
Yeah.
heavy metal, and all that. I mean, they still do. It's still a very potent thing in the horror genre. And it's like, yep, not even subtle.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. Uh yeah, he's blaming everything else on, he's blaming him killing everybody on her and her mother and everything
Hmm.
else and all this other stuff. And she's like, no, you kill because that's what you want to do. You're choosing to. And yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's a good, like, response to that, in the wake of Columbine, and to people trying to demonize movies and video games and everything else. So yeah, I didn't even think about that. That was a good catch on that one.
Oh yeah, that's I think that's always why it's my favorite. It's just the
Yeah.
her delivery of the take some responsibility
Yeah.
with it.
Absolutely.
It's like poor girl's been through a lot in a few years. Cause
Yeah. Yeah.
that's okay. I'm not gonna lie. That's one thing that always bugs me is Roman says it's only like 4 or 5 years ago where he tracks
Right.
down Maureen, and I'm like, hang on. So the events of 1 through 3 take place over 5 years. Like Sydney graduates high school. She probably doesn't finish her college career and then moves off to somewhere else in California. Like,
From what I understand the timeline, and that's the inconsistency. I noticed this too, because he did say
hmm
it's been 4 years since he tracked her down.
yeah.
And that doesn't make sense just given what we know. So from the end of um Scream 1 to
hmm
the beginning of Scream 2 was 2 years. It was 2 years. She's, I guess, or that's what they say. It's been 2 years since the incidents. Then they say that this is now 3 years. Scream 3 is 3 years after Scream 2. So
hmm
that's 5 years after Scream 1, which then is 6 years total since the
Yeah.
death of Maureen. So
And the death of
the
Maureen is the 1 year before Scream.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's 6 years. Yeah, so it's like, and then if he met her and like tried to confront Maureen about that, there would be some time before that as well, at least enough time, and then time to convince these two kids to kill her and blah blah blah. So, there's definitely it's 6+ years by this point. So
hmm
the timeline that they say is inconsistent with the rest of uh what's been going on. But I think that again, that's one of those things that got slipped up in the
Yeah.
rewrites and everything
Yeah.
else that
Like,
happened.
it's not a huge deal. I just notice it and it still
No.
bugs me.
Yeah.
Like, of
Yeah.
all the
No,
things
it's
I
one
could
of
nitpick, that's not it.
no, and especially like, given that I have just did my Friday the 13th series, and that
Mhm.
timeline is so funky that like the events of like 7 and 8, which are firmly in the 80s. You can like just from fashion and everything else going on. But the timeline, the way it has to work is that those movies would have been in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, so it makes no sense timeline wise.
I mean, it could be the Saw movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Saw and Fast and Furious jump way worse than these.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, they're ridiculous. But um
Oh,
but those are my major things that I really
hmm
want to talk about Scream 3. I love Scream 3. I think
yeah.
it's, and these new things that these new considerations, the second killer, the
hmm
fact that they had to adjust things in the wake of Columbine, and this not so subtle message against, the rampant sexual abuse of actresses. Um, these themes and stuff in this movie just make it much deeper for me. And
Yeah.
I think that anybody who doesn't really like it should go back and kind of reevaluate based on
hmm
this kind of information, and just kind of look at it with that lens and see if maybe it might change. It might not, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Like, I get it, people don't like certain movies and stuff like that, but if you're kind of on the fence about it, I say go back and take a look at it, and you know with that new lens.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, everybody's Scream rankings are different, but like, there's never
Yeah.
been a bad one. And
No.
like, in
I
the best way possible, they're all like, sorry, not to interrupt, but like,
No, no, go ahead.
yeah, like each one is like time stamped in their own different way. Like the first one, it's the
Right.
start of cell phones. The fourth one, you start getting the like iPhones and all this technology, and like the commentaries over the different ones. Like
Yeah.
come three with that, come four with their own, come five has its own. I have my
Yeah.
thoughts and hopes as to the social commentary that we're gonna get in six.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, like they're all good. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of preference.
Oh yeah. No, I think that's what's nice about it is most people who like the Scream franchise, whatever one they, whatever order they put it in,
Yeah.
they tend to like them all. It's just
hmm
that preferred order.
hmm
We can all agree that it's one of the best slasher franchises there ever has been.
hmm
And that's due to a lot of it being so consistent in its narrative and in its in its overall story structure and everything. So
Yeah.
keeping everything consistent along the way. So that's for me. That's one of the best parts of it.
Oh, they've always been very well done.
Oh yeah. That being said, if you don't have anything else you want to say about Scream 3, we can jump into Scream 4 now.
But I think I'm good to get into Scream 4, which this is where I could really go. Because in speaking of Scream rankings, 4 falls in my number 2 spot behind
Okay.
the first. Yep.
All
Yeah, my
right.
top two would go. I think what did my order go? I think it was 1, 4, 2, 3, 5 is my
Okay.
ranking for Scream.
Yeah, mine is 1, 3, 5, 2, 4.
Interesting.
And it would be 4 2, but like I said, like
Yeah.
I bumped 2 up recently, kind of. And again,
Hmm.
it's not that I think that any of them were terrible. I think they're all great.
Yeah.
It's just, how are you gonna put that in? And that's kind of just my preferred
Yeah. Like I think
order at the moment.
3. Yeah, I think, but it could change on the day. Like I think after watching 3 again more because it used to go like 1, 4, 2, 3, and I'm like I
Yeah.
there are some days where I could bump 3 up more, and
All right, exactly.
I could bump 3 over 2 depending
Yeah.
on my mood.
Yeah. No, I think that's that's what's fun about the series is it really could just depend on the day and
Yeah.
what you're wanting out of it, what you're getting out of it, and everything. So, but yeah, that being said, number 4,
Hmm.
is now 10 years, no, 11 years later, came out 11 years later in
Yep.
2011. Pretty much
Hmm.
everybody thought the Scream franchise was dead at that point. Nobody,
Yeah.
it was a big surprise that we were getting another one, and and everybody was coming back, and it's a great movie, and I think that it's interesting because this one is it's a few years after social media has kind of started. It's still you know at the very beginning of it, and
Hmm.
so that's a large part of what we're getting in this is now you're getting the cell phones, like you said, the smartphones.
Hmm.
They have apps, so they're using an app to change their voice rather than the voice changer that we had before,
Hmm.
and now they're using uh, portable cameras to basically
Yeah.
record everything. And this is kind of like before people really started to do that. Like
Yeah.
nowadays, like that's pretty much what everybody does, like
Yeah. It
between
was Twitch
TikTok and
before
YouTube.
Twitch.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so this is really kind of interesting to go back and watch this because this was like, this is what it has become like. And
Hmm.
this was when this came out, it was so new that people are like, oh no, nobody's going to be
Yeah.
doing this. So, yeah,
It's
see,
potentially the most relevant now being what, 12 years later
yeah,
almost because it was April 2011 this came out. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It follows a lot of the same beats because they are kind of like the whole aspect of this is that the killers are kind of recreating the first one.
Hmm.
So we're kind of getting not really a retread of the first one, but we're getting similarities to it. And
Oh, very much like you could watch the first and then just jump right to the fourth. And
yeah,
it'd just be like, yeah, Gail and Dewey are married now. Like that's about the only connection that you need for it.
yeah. And so it's interesting. We get a whole new group of teenagers. We're back in Woodsboro. We're back at school. Like, and that's what's funny too, is like everybody talks about number 6 now. Oh my God, they're finally
Hmm.
getting out of Woodsboro. We've been
It's
out
like,
of
bro,
Woodsboro twice before. You know,
one
we were at
one out of 3 movies took place in Woodsboro.
yeah, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Half of the movies have now happened in Woodsboro, and half the movies have happened out of Woodsboro.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, just wait till
we're
they go to
getting.
space.
Let's hope that doesn't happen.
Oh God. Stab. Well, God, what does she say in like the opening of Scream 4? She's like, Stab 5 has time travel, which is by far the worst.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, the stab movies are so crazy. Like it makes sense that the in-universe version of these would have, jumped the shark so
They kind of take
badly.
like the Friday the 13th
Yeah.
trail of it. It's gonna be like Ghostface goes to hell next.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's too much. But yeah, no, I it's so rewatching this movie,
Hmm.
I I like it, of course. I enjoy all of these. There's just something about this one that doesn't completely land for me.
Hmm.
Um, it's good, and I like a lot of characters. I like a lot of the new additions to the cast. Marley Shelton as Deputy Hicks, and we get Anthony Anderson and Adam Brody as deputies, and it's just the addition of the little cops. The
Hmm.
cop characters are great. Um, and Adam Brody, I just want to point out, is like this weirdly unsung horror actor. Like he's in a
Hmm.
lot of horror stuff, but nobody
He's
really
appeared in
talks
our double
about him.
features. He's appeared in our
Yeah,
double feature now because we talked about Ready or Not with him, and
exactly.
he's my favorite character in that movie.
Yeah. And so, it's great seeing him in this stuff, because he's in Ready or Not, like you said, he's in
Yeah.
Jennifer's Body. He's in a bunch of random stuff like that just keeps popping up.
Hmm.
And he's one of those ones, he's kind of like Kyle Gallner, who,
Yes.
pops up in horror stuff and gets and hasn't gotten like the cred I think that he deserves for being a horror a genre horror
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give him some props on that because I've enjoyed him since as early as the OC when he the geeky friend and everything. So for me that was
Oh.
uh I identified with him because I'm a lifelong comic book geek. But you said this is your number two.
Yep.
Ha, let, let's hear why it's your number two.
It probably, I mean, it started from the first time I saw it because this one came out April 2011. I was a senior in high school. It was right before I
Right.
graduated. And that was the first time I got to see a Scream movie opening Friday night.
Okay. Yeah.
And like it was a packed theater and it got like not Scream 2 opening level kind of rowdy, but it got loud and it got loud at the right moments and at the right beats. Like the I never said I was in your closet scene. The theater went berserk. Sydney at the end is going, "Don't fuck with the original." I've never heard a movie theater get so loud with cheering. So like, I mean, I'm definitely a believer that the first time you watch a movie is essentially a core memory. Like if you go to a theater
Yeah.
and people are rude, the projector doesn't work, like it could be a bad memory, but that was such a good memory. It's still probably my favorite theatrical experience with
That's
it. So
awesome.
like that, it's like that just stuck with me, and that might be why I bump it up. It could be,
Right.
more relatable. Like I was a senior in high school, it came out, it was like all the social media and smartphones, all that kind of fun stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Well,
had a
yeah, you
blast.
would have related. Yeah, you would have
Yeah.
related with the characters, the teenagers
Hmm.
at that time. So that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm. Oh yeah, that was just so much fun. And I think that might be why it bumped. But again, I do think you could, like, if you're just watching them, you could jump from one to four and not miss a beat. Like they're
Right.
very much like sisters of movies too. So it had like that
Yeah.
familiarity, but also it kept it new.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
No, and I think it did a good job. Like I said, like, though they're recreating, you know, uh, for their own sake, that
Hmm.
they are, that the kills are different enough and that the story is different enough um, that it stands very well on its own.
Yeah.
Um, I likewise got to see this in the theater. I've
Hmm.
seen every Scream movie in the theater. Um, and but I going back to the movie itself, the beginning is interesting because we get this
Hmm.
instead of the what up until then was a killing of a popular actor, or in the case of number
Hmm.
three, killing off Cotton Weary in the beginning,
Yeah.
more of a shocking a killing. We get this we get this double fake out, and and they do it really
Yeah.
well. Like the what they kind of did was with all three of these opening sequences, the first sequence is, very much the typical normal,
Yeah.
ghost face, taunting people, killing them, whatever. And it was two actresses at the time who were, popular in TV shows at the time. I
Yeah.
can't recall who they are, what the shows were
I
at the time.
can picture them, but I can't. I
Right.
remember going into it beforehand. It was like, Kristen Bell and Anna Paquin are in the new Scream movie, and you're like,
Yeah.
what?
So
They're in for
they were
30
actually,
seconds, but they're in it.
yeah. So they're actually part of the second fake out. So the
Mhm.
the first girls, like, the first kill happens and you think, oh, okay, that's the beginning of Scream. No, it's just the beginning of Stab 5.
Yeah.
So, and somebody else is watching the movie. And so it's Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell, like you said, and they're watching it. And Anna Paquin's just bitching about, oh, these movies are so dumb, blah, blah, blah,
I
and
guess now it would be Twitter. It's like,
yeah,
no.
yeah, no, it would be Twitter. Yeah.
Again with the relevance.
Yeah. And so, and then and instead they change it up in this one, which was interesting too. There was no like ghost face, like, stalking them, messing with them in the beginning, calling them and all that we get in every other one.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah,
just
that's
Kristen Bell just rips out a knife and just stabs Anna Paquin right
hmm
in the stomach, like right away. And it's just like, okay, that's an interesting take on it.
I I do still kind of want to see that take of where
Yeah.
like the audience knows more than the
Knows who the killer
characters
is.
do.
Yeah.
Like of the certain trends they've done, like not even spoiler heavy, just observation heavy, that every time a killer has been a newly introduced character. It's never been
Yeah.
a carryover character. So it's like one of these times you want it to be a carryover character, and one of
Yeah.
these times I want to know who Ghostface is before the rest of the characters do. It would just be
Yeah.
like
No, that would
I don't
actually
think
be a very interesting
yeah.
take on it.
Yeah, like I don't know if it would take so much of like the punch that you get out of the initial taking off the mask and everything. Like again, with seeing Scream 4 in theaters, like Charlie comes up and stabs Kirby, and you're like, okay, we kind of saw this coming. You figured it was going to be one of
Yeah.
the film geeks, and like Robbie dies, so it's like, yeah, it's obviously Charlie.
Right.
It's like, okay, whatever. But then that second ghost face comes around, and like the sharp inhale from everybody of who's the second one, and then Jill takes off the mask, and you're like, oh my god, yes, it's your freaking cousin. Like, actually didn't see that coming, and it's like it would be different.
Yeah.
No.
I think though that because of the way the formula is set up with,
Mhm.
who is Ghostface, and especially because Ghostface is different every time. And so
Mhm.
that's part of the inherent fun of it, is
Yeah.
the mystery of who is it, what are the clues, what are they gonna, like, and then going back and watching it. So I think that would take some of the air out of the movie, if you knew ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think it would be an interesting choice, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, especially if maybe one of the characters but not
Yeah.
the other.
Yeah.
So I think that would be an interesting choice on that.
Which almost leads you to wonder, because like in talking how Scream 3 had all these rewrites amongst the killers, and same thing with 2.
Yeah.
But for 4, from what I remember, 4 was originally going to end with Jill being taken off on the stretcher, and it was just going to be cut to black. That's it.
Yeah.
Jill apparently lives. One of the killers actually lives. But then
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
tacked on the bit at the hospital at the end where Sid has her revenge, which gave us a couple of the best lines of the series, but it almost leads you to wonder, like, what would the next one have been if they kept Jill
If Jill
alive?
had lived. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
No, I mean, it would definitely change things up very well.
I mean, if it was me in the writer's seat, I would have rather them kept Mickey alive. Like of the potential killers, like, and just kind of paralleling it to the TV show, where at the end you see one of the killers in prison.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I think Mickey would have been the more interesting one to see in the prison, like talking on the phone or just anything with that. I
Yeah.
think he would have been the one to do like, sorry to the stew stands who still want to see him alive. I still want to see Mickey alive.
Yeah, I'm a stew stand, don't get me wrong. Uh no, but I
Uh,
agree with you. I think it would be interesting to have one of the Ghostface killers like actually live through one of these,
mhm.
just get hurt and incapacitated and arrested for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe not escape, and then just be something that could potentially be a problem later on. So,
Well, between that and then how do I say this? Because I know people are very nervous about like Scream 6 and potential spoilers, but just one of my hopes for Scream 6, and it would be something that they could do if character or one of the killers was alive, was just talking about like the true crime culture that's
yeah,
developed and how either well done or insensitive it could be in the fine line that it walks. Like, I really hope that comes up in Scream 6. And if any of
yeah,
the killers had been kept alive, that would have been a perfect bridge and connection to do
yeah,
so.
absolutely. Yeah, no, and that's something that I have mentioned several times.
Hmm.
Is that I believe, and bringing up that true crime aspect of it,
Hmm.
that I think that that in this
Hmm.
world that has so many fans of this movie franchise, the Stab movie franchise,
Hmm.
based on these killings,
Yeah.
that, because obviously in this universe, there are
Hmm.
movies that have been made about these killings. And so it's like they're already being like exploited
Yeah.
100%. And it's this like, even with Scream 3, it's this
Hmm.
like, circular nature to it that is eating itself, that these
Hmm.
movies are now basically kind of creating the, and with Scream 5, and I don't
Hmm.
want to get too much into Scream 5, but you know
That's for
there's
another
this,
day.
yeah, there's this aspect of this where these movies have created this, um these fans and these and this true crime aspect of it. And we see that in, like you said, my daughter's a fan of true crime, I've been a fan of true crime,
Hmm.
that that it's just that weird nature of it. Like, my daughter
Yeah.
and I aren't the, people who like obsess over that kind of stuff and everything.
Yeah.
It's just interesting hearing the stories. But it's more like, in this world, I feel like there could be a cult of, what I call a cult of Ghostface killers. Basically,
Yeah.
people who've all connected online and everything, who are now killing,
Yeah.
and stop doing this, killing these people from Woodsboro, but they're killing people around the world. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's the natural progression of what the Scream franchise could possibly get to,
I,
and open it up to this much bigger world of killing, and
yeah.
these ghost
I
faces.
feel
So
yeah. I feel like I remember hearing like it was either fan theories or fan hopes with the franchise of like the Ghostface cult, like around the time that four was
yeah,
starting to come into production and news was coming, like Ghostface cult was going to be a thing, whether or not that had to do with the whole Chucky cult, which I love Cult of Chucky, not gonna lie, but just this whole kind of like what could be the next innovation or story that they do. And
right,
Ghostface cult has been kind of hushed and whispered about for a while.
right,
So yeah, like again, I have my own theories or hopes or whatever I want Scream 6 to do. So
right.
again, another day, maybe after 6 comes out, we can come back and do 5 and 6.
Well, I'm doing 5 and 6 with another guest,
Oh,
but
oh,
yes, yeah, I definitely, I'm really hoping that number 6 kind of dives into this a little bit more, just to kind of get to that natural progression of the way, like we said. I mean, the original script treatment or outline or whatever that Kevin Williamson gave to uh, Miramax and everything was that it was going to be Stu having this influence over multiple students,
Hmm.
kind of creating that cult like uh, entity. So uh, I think that was kind of where the seed probably you know got planted along the way, and since then people, and that's I think where the stew coming back stuff and the cult stuff started to kind of happen at
Hmm.
that point, and then it's just kind of germinated since then, and just nobody's really gone on with it. Which I
Yeah.
understand they want to do whatever else they want to do on it, but so
Mhm. I mean, I'm sure there's a fan script out there that's written it.
oh, I'm
Like I'd
sure.
be lying if I said I didn't start a fan script because I know six takes place on what like a Halloween parade. I'm like, dude, I want to Scream to like either start or take place like around Christmas. Like Ghostface in the snow would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's so many places this can go. And I hope that they get a chance to do it, and if as long as they do it well. Like that's the thing, at
Right.
least with Scream, like we haven't really gotten a bad sequel. Nothing
No.
that I would say has you know really deviated much from in a way that was terrible.
Yeah.
So and I'm hoping that stays true, and that everybody involved in it continues to make really good movies in the future. So,
Mm. Oh yeah. I'm
um,
still gonna see him.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I watch tons of terrible sequels to franchises and stuff, and I'll continue watching them. So,
Continue
uh,
or what's a completion sake? That's what it
yeah,
is.
exactly. So, is there anything else about number four that you wanted to talk about that we haven't yet?
That's a good question. I mean, other than just my complete love for it. Yeah.
And we're finally
Oh,
getting Kirby back in number six.
we
The
are, which
yeah.
fan service comes through.
I mean, if
I
any
mean,
series is going to be
what?
fan servicey, it's got to be Scream. So
Yeah. I mean, Wes has teased it for years. Like, as soon as four came out, it, people were like, "No, she was the best. She can't be dead." And he's like, "Well, we never saw her. She was still moving when the camera cut away."
yeah.
And then people would point out and there's like a second like right before Charlie jumps out and grabs Sid during the finale, you can like hear a door click in the distance. And so
Hmm.
like the idea has become that's Kirby crawling back into the house.
Hmm. Interesting.
It's like, I'll buy it or not. I was like, hell yeah. Give me back Kirby. She was the best.
Well, and it's nice to see that somebody, and this goes into what we were saying before about one of the Ghostface killers surviving and
Mm-hmm.
continuing on. That this is the rare franchise that we've actually had. The we had Dewey, Gale, and Sydney continued
Yeah.
throughout the whole series up until the last one,
Yep.
and we're not getting Sid in this one, which is fine. Let her go and be happy. Like, please let
Yeah.
her just it doesn't have to be about Sydney anymore. This again, I feel like Ghostface has outgrown Sydney,
Yeah.
and
Like
her
like if it
influence.
wasn't for a contract dispute, I would be better about it. So
Oh yeah, one hundred
yeah.
percent. Yeah, I think they
Like I'm
were.
gonna
I
see
think
six, but I'm gonna be salty about it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I'm glad that at least the character gets some kind of, you know,
Last.
happiness after this point. And so,
Which yeah, I
it's
guess one thing we didn't talk about with it is again not thinking about it in three that she's married to Patrick Dempsey.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's I mean
And
like
they don't
good for
mention it in
her.
number four. I was waiting for them to mention it in number
No.
four, and they never mention it in number four that she's married. It's not mentioned
Yeah.
again until number five. And so it's
Yeah.
that
It's only like so brief, but they say it's Mark and it's like the only Mark we've been introduced to is Mark Kincaid, what's his name? Dr.
exactly.
Dreamy or whatever. So another legacy character from Scream 3 coming back.
Yeah,
Kind of.
kind of. At least he got
Kind of.
mentioned, so that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do like that. She got some happiness with him, and
Mhm.
that they continued that on. Uh, but yeah, it'll be nice to number six will be interesting and fun to see for sure. So
Provided nobody spoils it, which
yes, yeah, absolutely.
so
Oh,
help
but
me.
that's what I was saying. Like at least with Kirby coming
Right.
back, we get another character, another legacy character, somebody else who
Mm-hmm.
was hurt but not killed,
Yep.
coming back into the fold again. So,
So we got a
we
lot of
might,
those coming up for 6. There's a
yeah,
lot of them coming back because they did a lot of
yeah,
fake outs in 5, which again, not getting into 5,
yeah,
just
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about upcoming
exactly.
6.
Yeah. No, but I think that's what's good too about this series as a whole. We're getting Gale back, and then we're getting
hmm
Kirby back. Kirby kind of takes the place of Sydney in a way, in a small way.
Yeah. Let's say
Um,
between like that and then Dewey, because to my
yeah,
understanding, they're making Kirby like an FBI agent or something. So
yeah,
she's kind
something
of
like that.
doing
The
like
cop
a little
character.
double
Yeah,
duty,
yeah,
which I don't want to say that feels like an annihilation of her character because in 4 she's so like quirky and
yeah,
sassy and everything. Like
yeah.
it
Hopefully,
almost feels like if Randy became a cop.
yeah, which
Kind
would
of
be
like
very odd. Yeah,
If Randy like was like, "Oh, I can find all these killers because I know all these movie tropes and that's why I'm a good detective." Like maybe,
yeah,
but also I would have rather see her come back as like a victim's advocate or something like that,
yeah,
not full FBI agent.
yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with it, and hopefully have a good explanation for it, for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, I mean, and maybe fingers crossed, maybe she'll get to continue on into future installments.
hmm
Um, it's nice to see Hayden Panettiere back on the screen. So
Oh yeah, it's just good to see that she's coming back, and they've never actually changed actors. Like, come to think of it, every time they brought a character back, it's always been the same actor,
yeah, exactly.
which should probably attest to the franchise itself.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that and having Calvin Williamson continue on as a producer, even though he's not
hmm
writing or anything with these, that he's still involved. He still has a say, and they
hmm
still are, you know, talking to him and getting his guidance on these characters and making something new and of their own, but also
Yeah.
honoring the past without completely rewriting it. And that's
hmm
again, I think, a testament to the series as a whole, because you go back and look at a lot of these other series and especially horror series in general, and each sequel is like something new all on its own. And like thinking about the Friday
hmm
the 13th franchise that I have just gone through again, that
Yeah.
it's every movie was something different. They tried to
Yeah.
have some kind of consistency to it, but everything was like each one was so different and unique in their
hmm
own that they were they there was no real true consistency in them.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that with the Scream franchise, and that's again why it's my favorite slasher franchise. So
Agreed.
yeah,
Like
so
for all my slasher loves, Scream is still my favorite of the franchises.
yeah, absolutely. All right.
Whew.
Well, uh,
That was awesome as per usual.
thank you. Yeah, I had a great time. Where can people find you online?
All right, I'm most active on my Twitter. It's another for the fire, with 4 being the numeral 4. And then I'm just getting back into it now more. I was kind of idle on my blog for a bit, but I'm getting more back into it, which is another one for thefire.com. Um, but yeah, I'm working on getting more back into writing, so hopefully you guys will be seeing me popping up in more places as well. I write for Hear Us Scream periodically. I was publishing their first anthology. I've done a couple reviews for them. I've done a couple list articles for Neon Splatter. Got a couple more coming down the pipeline. I'm not going to spoil until they're out, and then I will promote the crap out of them.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you letting me come back and talking about one of my favorite movies. Like Scream 4 remains one of my just all-time favorites among the Scream franchise. So thank you for letting me come back on.
Of course. Yeah, no, it was a
Uh,
great conversation.
oh,
All
it's always
right.
so much fun. Sweet.
Thanks again to Amber for joining me. Next episode is part 3 in the Scream series, and I'll be talking all about Scream 5 and 6 with Kat Hughes. Be aware, there will be spoilers aplenty. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more from our TeePublic page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.